Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games, and welcome to ExileCon Day 2. We've got an incredibly packed schedule today. There's a lot of awesome stuff being streamed. We've got some awesome interviews with various people, lots of people playing 400, and the day culminates with our grand 2019 race finale, where we'll award $10,000 US to the best Path of Exile racer. So we've got a great schedule today, and it opens with Quin interviewing me. So please take it away.
Yeah, I actually got the opportunity to interview the literal god himself, Chris Wilson. I had a chat with you yesterday, and you said pretty much I can ask you whatever I want.
Absolutely.
And obviously, day one of the con, you guys asked and answered almost every question that I wanted to do, which is it's bad for me, but it's good because you guys are obviously listening to the community.
I'm sure we'll find plenty to talk about.
Yeah. So what I did is I asked Twitch chat, I asked the internet, what do you guys want to hear? And I picked the ones that haven't been asked yet. So we'll start off right away. You said the Pee-wee skill tree is getting modified in the future. While I understand you don't have anything concrete to talk about now, could you tell us what about the current skill tree you really like and what aspects you dislike and would like to improve on the future? Like, for example, you know, people, I play a lot of Diablo, and people see the Pee-wee skill tree and they say, no, I don't want to play that game. Like,
that's a great question. So Path of Exile has this experience where when you run the game and you press P, which happens in the first area because you have to do it before you get to town, you're blown away by this incredible 1500 node skill tree, right?
Yep.
So the question is this a good thing or a bad thing for new players versus existing players, right? So let's look at new players first. On one hand, this tells you what you're getting in for, because even if you hide a lot of the tree, they're still going to be exposed to the tree eventually. So is it really worth having a bait and switch where you let them, you have a higher retention rate through the first area, and then you eventually lose the users later when they see the full tree? And then the other aspect, of course, with existing players is if you start dumbing down the tree by hiding most of it or changing the early levels of it, that could be perceived negatively. Like the tree is the soul of Path of Exile in some ways. You know, it's an iconic thing. I'm not entirely sure that trying to make it more accessible is necessarily the right direction to be taking it.
do you think it's bloated at all? Like there's, I've seen some heat maps showing you where people actually go, and there's like completely dead areas of the tree, and then also like just a lot of the attribute nodes, for example, could technically be removed or to make it less intimidating.
Yeah, that's a very good point, though. To some extent, having the choice there is important. Even if there's an obvious right choice, it's a kind of a mastery behavior to know that it's an obvious right choice. There are still people who take the bad skills, and it's good to have them there. If we just limit it to the positive ones, then it's kind of a pick your build from, you know, a few builds. Though I do agree, like obviously the tree will be different. It's going to need some work. The game is balanced pretty differently. You know, we're going for quite a bit more difficulty. You know, I'm not saying we're trying to achieve a slower pace, but we're definitely aware of the fact that there's certainly a lot of speed and spam creep going on towards the end of the game.
I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, let's definitely do that.
Yeah, so you are saying that you are going to make some sort of significant change to the tree in the future, or no?
It's a constant discussion at the moment.
Okay.
We honestly don't exactly know what we're doing, but there certainly needs to be tree changes. There have been some pretty radical ideas suggested so far. We're probably not making it three-dimensional.
Okay, a three-dimensional tree. Oh my God, okay. All right, to completely change the subject, during the PoE 2 reveal, you said, we knew we couldn't extend the PoE campaign forever. It'll take too long to get to maps. So will maps still be the primary endgame for PoE 2, and will that fit naturally into the storyline?
Absolutely.
Will you need to play through the first campaign to unlock PoE 1's, you know, league mechanics?
Great. So the way this works is when you create a character, you can choose which story you want to play. Do I play Path of Exile 1, which is a story about Dominus exiling someone from Oriath to Rayclass, and then the player getting revenge and eventually discovering about the beast and doing all of that, and then causing Katava to, you know, be summoned by the Kururi slaves when you free them from Oriath, and eventually, sorry, lots of spoilers here, but that story, right? So that's Path of Exile 1. You can choose to play Path of Exile 1, or you can choose to play Path of Exile 2, which is a story set later after the fall of Katava, where bad things are starting to happen on Ogham, and people don't know why, and so, you know, you're being executed but managed to escape, and I don't want to get too much into Path of Exile 2
spoilers. I haven't played yet, so.
Right. So anyway, that's a separate story. So you choose which one you want to play. Now, even though they take place with a different set of exiles at a different time, with different, you know, broad enemies, though, you know, some common themes between them, they still have access to a map device.
Oh.
And maps are timeless, so maps aren't occurring at any particular time. So you can use the map device to access maps that are the same between the two. So it's got kind of a shared endgame. Now, our eventual goal here, and I'm not promising this at this stage, it's just something we're trying to work towards, is the concept that you can play a character in either campaign in the same league. So we introduce a new league, like let's say Metamorph that's coming out. You could theoretically play Path of Exile 1 or 2 campaign and play with those other people on the maps where you have access to different ascendancies and so on depending on what you chose. And this is something we're going to both make more decisions decisions about and more announcements about in the future. But it would be really cool if the two campaigns are kind of an optional choice. Obviously, a lot of people will choose Path of Exile 2 because it's better. That's why we're making it.
You just pick whatever's faster, right? If you're trying to be a real tryhard.
Yeah, and we're going to have to make sure that they're about equal, right? We're just going to have to achieve that. They're going to give the same number of stat points, the same number of skill points, and I mean, it may be that Path of Exile 2 is a faster way to get to maps because we do feel it takes a little too long at the moment. But for the kind of person who wants the storyline of Path of Exile 1, they enjoy it for nostalgic reasons. Maybe they're happy spending an extra hour to get to maps. Maybe the racers won't, but some players will choose to.
Sweet as. Okay, this one here is a little bit of a touchy subject. Mobile games. Yep. So a fear of many people is that we're seeing whenever they release a mobile game for an IP, the design philosophy changes to cater towards mobile limitations. Can you guarantee this is never going to happen to PoE? So, like, you're not going to cuck the main PC game just because mobile?
This touches on the concept of whether or not there's crossplay between mobile and PC. And at this stage, well, probably permanently, we're not planning on having the crossplay so that we don't need to hurt the PC game.
Not even cosmetics? So, like, if you were to play the mobile game and, you get some achievement in the game, it would then unlock something on your main account.
Well, so that's a possibility. It's cool for marketing reasons, but that has its own drawback where, imagine you're a PC player, you're not particularly interested in a mobile necessarily, and 100%. Suddenly all the cool kids are unlocking stuff by playing a mobile game, and you feel like in order to compete with them, you now have to not only put the hours in on the PC, but also put the hours in on mobile, right? Your bathroom breaks at work, and you're having to play Path of Exile just to keep up. So that's a difficult thing. I mean, it would be great for marketing reasons. Maybe we'll find a good way to do it, but we're conscious of the fact we don't want people to feel forced to play the mobile version. As to the design question, we're trying to keep it a pure Path of Exile game. Like, for example, the monetization, it's not going to be pay to win. It's exactly what you expect. We haven't had explicit discussions about this, but I can promise we're not going to be throwing in dumb, mobile monetization gimmicks. And with gameplay, as you can see by playing it on the show floor, it certainly is a different feel of gameplay to Path of Exile because you're playing with your fingers. You access skills using this cool dynamic D-pad thing where if you want to leap slam somewhere, you can just like swipe up. If you've got leap slam on, swipe up. And you want to put an offering down, that might be swipe down. So there's cool ways of playing, and that does change how the game works, but it has all the things that it needs to be Path of Exile. We managed to get 5 flasks there. You've got 8 skill binds. You have the passive tree. You have all the items. We haven't removed any important features of the game.
Okay, so it's going to be completely separate, no crossover, generally speaking, unless there's some clever way of doing it. Okay, completely going to change the subject again. So resistance is a character's most important defensive stat, so like, resists. But with 3.9, with changes to ring quality, it looks even easier than ever. And it's already pretty trivial in the game right now. And, you've said in the past that you want, like, no aspects of the game to be, like, super, super easy, right? And now with this new quality change, it's going to be even more of a joke than it already is to cap your res.
Yes.
Do you think that's a problem at all?
The tricky thing about this is, if we knew that catalysts were making their way into the permanent game as a thing forever, then we could balance around it. We can make sure to do a pass on resistances, keep it fun. And I don't mean just nerf resistances for the sake of keeping it challenging, but yeah, that. But what I mean, though, is we want to make sure that game systems are engaging. If resistances are trivialized, that's a negative thing. But we don't mean to just take them away from players arbitrarily. But we do a pass on it to make sure it's good. The issue is that catalysts are a drop specific to the Metamorph League. I like Metamorph. It's one of my favorite leagues we've done recently. But there's no guarantee it's getting into the core game, right? And so if we were to make game-wide resistance changes, they'd start to affect Standard, for example, even though there's no catalyst available in Standard unless hardcore players die and bring them over and then they're expensive. So it is a bit tricky for us to do anything about resistances in the very short term. But if they're staying in the game, then yes, we will need to balance around them.
Okay, that's really good then. So the new skill system looks to have opened up a lot more buttons that you want to press in game. And because of this, are we going to see more synergy with skill design, like combinations, for example, like 2 skills? Because, I mean, we're going to have heaps of 6 links now, right?
Yeah, you can have up to 8. I mean, potentially even more into some situations, right, if you get skills granted by items. So the team are exploring a lot of interesting stuff with skills recently, and synergies and so on are something they now have the luxury to look into now that we have a good stable of skills. Like, for a very long time, we felt we were fleshing out what Path of Exile needs to be an action RPG. There were important skills we just didn't have. Shape-shifting and so on. And so now that we're actually getting all our bases covered, we can look at more interesting combo and synergistic skills. I mean, we've seen it a little bit in the past, pairs of skills like Blink and Mirror Arrow that are designed to, work together for PvP where you don't know which one the other person's used and so on. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a lot more interesting skills. I also thought of something that I should have said in the last question about catalysts.
Okay.
they do make resistances easier, but there are lots of other types of catalysts as well. So if you've capped your res, don't use catalysts for resistances, use them for like damage or something instead.
Okay. Again, I'm going to completely change the subject. So punishing and well-telegraphed one-shot mechanics, or almost one-shot mechanics, I think are totally fine, right? And I really like it. Because, you have to sign up to it. It's consensual. Like, you go to Uber Elder, you expect, okay, if I mess up, I'm going to get one-shot. But, in in-game maps, like T16 maps, when you have crazy mods, for example, these mechanics, for example, the Phoenix Guardian, when he's all juiced up, he just does stuff almost instantly, and it's really hard to avoid. Like, do you think that you might consider, the one-shot mechanics maybe not being affected by sort of like animation increasing speed effects at all?
That's a very good topic, but I think it's one that's better discussed with the guys who are working directly on the boss fights. Like, in principle, I agree with what you're saying. It sounds sensible, but it's the kind of thing that I bring to the team and say, we should do this. The community think it's reasonable. It will, it's hurting players. It's unfair. What are we going to do? And they'll give me 5 reasons why we have to keep it. And I don't know that's the case, right? I haven't spoken about them with this one, but it is the kind of thing we have to be hesitant about. But they're fully aware of it. I mean, these guys, they go home and they just play those exact maps, right? We've had points in the past where people have, said something sarcastic about one of our team members, so that team member has gone and won the solo self-found hardcore ladder or whatever, just to prove it while working, 10-hour days or whatever that guy was doing that week.
I've heard stories actually about like some developers playing the game and they died to some mechanic. Like apparently, this is the word on the street. One of the PoE devs died to reflect damage, just the old reflect where you just randomly just die, and then the next day it was like patched out.
It's a cool kind of story, but realistically, it's one of the things that merely prompts a conversation, and there've been conversations before. I lost a hardcore character to puncture, and I waited a while before complaining about that.
Okay, another completely different question. So two-handers' biggest advantage used to be that you'd have like 2 6-link abilities, right?
Yep.
And even then, you would still, generally speaking, just use dual-wield setups because it was just a lot better being a melee player or like with a shield. So are you going to redesign it with two-handers? Are you going to make the two-handers specific skills? Like, what's the deal with two-handers now with the new skill system?
So we acknowledge the fact that it takes away one of the advantages of letting you have the 2 6-links. And that means that two-handers have to be better in some other way, right? Maybe they're just going to do more damage now. Maybe there's another cool quirk we can come up with. It's worth noting that the two-handers do have 4 sockets, like bows did in the demo, whereas other items just have 2, so you get 2 plus 2. But we'll have to make sure that there is a legitimate reason for wanting to forego the dual wielding bonuses or forego the shield bonuses.
Okay. In the past, this is a good one. Okay, in the past, you've never been one to shy away from referring to Diablo games, and you've been very vocal in the last year, saying that you predict D4. You said it on a podcast, and 4.0 must compete with it. Now that you know your competition a little bit better, what are your thoughts? And are you worried? Like, are you worried about D4? Do you see yourself as being a direct competitor, or?
The thing that I'm happy about is any new game that anyone makes has experimental new elements to it where they don't know really whether people are going to like it or not. They can do as much testing as they want, they can make it as good as they want, and some games just don't quite gel with the audience for various reasons, right? Whether it's, small design problems, whether it's pacing. There's a lot of reasons why games can just, not be as good as the designers had hoped. We know the Path of Exile is good. The fact there's thousands of people here and hundreds of people watching me literally over there, and, I don't know how many people are on Twitch right now, but it's a lot. It's a scary number. The fact that is happening around Path of Exile shows people like Path of Exile, and we're not removing the Path of Exile from this. We're giving you a new storyline. We're making improvements to the skill system that have no drawbacks that we can see. We're coming up with new systems that add to it. We know the core of the game is solid. We know we're not screwing around with the itemization, right? It's going to be good. We're gonna keep to the plan that we've been doing for a very long time and stick to that. And Path of Exile players can expect it. Other action RPGs are going to try new and experimental stuff. Maybe they are the new best action RPGs, right? For competition's sake, I hope so. But on the other hand, they might not be. And we're going to sit there, at the 90% mark, and maybe someone gets to 100, but I'm happy to be at 90, and that gives me a lot of confidence.
Okay. PoE in-game is very fast, and you've hinted at elements like increasing the mobs' HP pools and things. But right now, animations are crazy for any in-game build, especially ones with incredibly quick animation speeds. Yeah. Will we see any improvements, maybe like attack speed breakpoints, where a skill gets a new impressive animation, so it doesn't look like your guy's just going literally crazy? Because we still want to feel like gods at the end game, but right now we feel like clowns, like with some of the really fast attacking
I understand, and the team sees that as well. It's a really good idea, actually, having new animations for the, godlike speed, as it were. That's not something we've discussed internally. I mean, the animation team may have done, but it hasn't got to me. So that kind of thing is a better solution, because normally what people say is, the endgame's too fast. How are you going to slow it down? And the problem is, when you actually go and do that, the players are like, that's not what we wanted. We didn't want you to make it worse for us. We wanted to find a magical solution to the problem that doesn't involve reducing our power. And new animations and stuff are the kind of magical solution that we'd be looking for there. So I'll bring it up with the team, but this is something a lot of people are conscious of and working on.
Okay. So speaking about speed and PoE, so what's the reason behind making PoE in-game so fast compared to traditional ARPGs? Like, either you're teleporting around and just one-shotting everything, or you're just dead. Like, it's like this kill or be killed thing. And also, like, area of effect skills in PoE and, like, smart targeting abilities where, like, it's just, like, by design, you can just annihilate an entire screen with a single button press. Is that intentional?
Sorry, just choking it. So, this is the consequence of power creep building up over a lot of years. I remember having a conversation with one of my developers a long time ago. We're talking in the alpha of Path of Exile. And he said to me, Chris, the endgame is really slow. You're like flicker strike is flicker strike, flicker strike, flicker strike.
I love that ability.
He said one of his favorite things about old school action RPGs was stacking attack speed and going nuts. Sorry.
Don't die.
So, had this conversation, and he said, can we make it faster, right? Like, he was citing D2. His characters in D2 were just faster and faster. And so I said to him, look, we have many, many years. We want to keep this going for 10 plus years. And there's going to be a lot of incremental creep. That speed will come, and it will be a bad thing when it does. And it's going to be uncontrollable, and we're fighting that from the beginning. Everything should be a matter of only incremental power gains for every release that we do.
So at PoE 2, do you think you're going to see a massive slowdown in terms of, like, speed of the game and pacing of the game? Like a reset button almost, or?
It's really tempting to say that would be a good thing, but I don't think it necessarily is, because we don't want the situation where someone runs Path of Exile 2, tries their cool build and says, yeah, this is crap now, right? Like, it has to be that someone enjoys the game in exactly the same way they want to be doing. And look, we do need to try to find a way to make it not quite as fast at the end game, but it's not going to be slow. We want to make sure that we still have every improvement you make to your character feels impactful. Maybe it's spread over slightly more time, right? Like, maybe there's more interesting steps in getting to that point, so you're not running around like a complete god after one day or whatever, and a new season starts.
Okay, to segue from that, actually, so in terms of mobility skills, so in Path of Exile, and this is pretty specific to PoE, actually, there's a couple other games, but it's like infinite mobility in terms of just, mobility skills which have no cooldown, and there's no real choice. Like, when you engage with a pack of mobs, it's like, oh, do I want to hold my thing to get away, or like, oh, should I leap now to avoid like a one-shot telegraph mechanic? It's just like, oh no, I'm just going to leap in, and then if something bad happens, I'm going to leap out. Or is that something you guys are thinking about in terms of mobility skills, like being too strong, having literally no cooldown, just infinite spam?
Well, we improved mobility skills quite a lot with the Legion melee changes, because we wanted to have it so that you can dart in and out of combat, make melee feel really good. And we also tried to make sure that this wasn't something that spellcasters could abuse too much. At the same time, we needed so the characters can get out of the way of highly telegraphed attacks. Someone's about to slam you and you get out of the way. We don't want it so you're using movement skills as traversal, right? We don't want the situation where there's a, no cooldown teleport that you go bang, 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 bang across the map and get to a boss.
Isn't that currently what's in the game? Like,
I mean, you can't go over walls at least, which is good,
I love, like, Dash, for example, is amazing. I love it, and it's awesome, but I never really put it in my gear, because I'm like, why would I ever put that in my gear over something like Leap Slam?
Yeah, Leap Slam is certainly powerful. I mean, there's some subtlety to it as well. Like, when you Leap Slam, technically there's a cooldown or an internal, like, full animation that has to play. So if you chain them, it plays a full animation. If you haven't used it for a while, it will skip the animation and let you get right into it with an instant start. We're trying to go in the direction of that kind of stuff there, where if you're using it sporadically, you get more benefit than if you're using it in a chained way. And I agree, the movement in Path of Exile certainly makes me a little uncomfortable. Having said that, that's something we're a bit careful before we reduce, because people are used to it, right? There was a patch too, the Marvel Heroes game a number of years ago, where they were upset at the insane movement speeds that some characters managed to achieve, and so they fixed it, and that was perceived negatively by the community. And we're very careful about having the same reaction. We don't want to upset existing players, but we don't want to solve the problem, so we'll do it in the most careful way we can, and probably communicate it, right? This isn't going to be a sudden patch, oh, by the way, the game's bad now. Yes. It's going to be something where we say, we're considering the following changes, do you have any thoughts about it? And we'll listen to the hatred and the angry Reddit threads, and then try to take into account and, test it.
That's why I'm not a game designer. If it was me, I would just put a cooldown on all mobility skills.
It's honestly... It's a difficult topic because there's things that are hard to change. And I've got a really good example here. So the correct thing to do in action RPGs is have it so that when you go to town, you talk to an NPC and then it heals you. It doesn't just fill your flasks upon coming out of the portal. Because that way, there's a bit of a cost to it, there's a bit of an in-world thing, you have to go and talk to an NPC. Now, when we were implementing it initially, we made it so when you come out of the portal, instantly you're healed and all your flasks are filled up because we were lazy and it's a pain to make it, so you have to go and talk to an NPC and that requires a different programmer to do it, and, you know, we'll do this later. We can't do this later now. If we made it into tomorrow's patch, so when you go to town, it doesn't fill your flasks, you have to go walk through town and talk to someone and walk back, there would be a riot. That would be an unnecessary change as far as they're concerned. You know, to be
Pandora's box. Once you open it, that's it. Like,
and there are changes like that all over the place, right? If I went through and made all the changes I think that would make Path of Exile a better game, there would be no players tomorrow. And that's not because my ideas are bad. It's things we should have done from the beginning that would be completely fine if they were just there the whole time, if you see what I mean.
Maybe PoE 2 is an opportunity then to make some significant changes that might be like a little bit abrasive.
A few of them. But we have to be careful because we do not want the situation where PoE 2 comes out and forces a bad game on people.
True.
And an example is death penalties. We have death penalties in Path of Exile. No one's complaining about them. If we didn't have death penalties and we introduced them tomorrow, there would be a riot. You know, it's about the status quo. And so we're very cognizant of the fact that we have some crazy ideas we think would make the game better that we kind of can't do.
In terms of group meta, so I really love PoE and I play it all the time, obviously, but I never engage in groups unless I absolutely have to, because whenever I do, it's again this thing where either you're running around picking up loot behind someone, or you're the guy just teleporting around and killing stuff. Is there any plans to like make group meta like more engaging, maybe group-based mechanics, encounter specific to groups perhaps?
So I do want multiplayer gameplay to be better, right? I agree with the problem that because of the fast pace of the game, it is a little bit rough. The tricky thing is we don't want to make mechanics that require you to play in a party, because our kind of design philosophy here is everything is possible solo or in a party. We'll never make solo-only content, we'll never make party-only content. We want to make sure both are fully supported. So, for example, there were rumors we were going to announce 12-man raids in the game. It's probably never happening, unfortunately, because 90% of players will party occasionally, but prefer to just go and grind alone if they can do, and so they just wouldn't engage with that content.
Completely different subject. In terms of trading, so obviously you guys have said you don't want an auction house and things like that, but there was talk of incorporating some sort of in-game browser where you could, you know, instead of having to alt-tab to like PoE trade and, you know, use third-party stuff, you could do it in-game via some sort of, you know, panel interface.
I think that's far more likely than an auction house, yes.
So that PoE 2 may happen, some sort of...
If we were to add an in-game trade browser that goes to the trade site and lets you view it and stuff, that could be done at any time rather than in PoE 2. It's just something that we haven't had time to actually go and do yet. There's subtlety to it. Like, we'd want to use an actual browser to render it, and that means embedding a copy of Chromium or whatever in the game, and then there's various issues and compatibility, and, you know, it's doable, entirely doable. It's just a matter of time.
Okay. We got really limited time here, so I'm just going to use some bonus questions. Death logs. Any chance?
The tricky thing is there's so many tiny things that do small damage that it will say the skeleton killed you and it was actually the poison damage that did 90% of your life just in small chunks. So there's a lot of bits and pieces like that where it's not going to be accurate unless we put a lot of work in.
So, okay, so potentially. What about male and female versions of models? Like, can you be, like, change gender?
In Path of Exile 2, by default, there is just one fixed sex per character class because it's a specific character you're dealing with. But we can make alternate sexes and probably will sell them as microtransactions.
Oh, okay. This is a random question. When are you guys going to sell merch worldwide?
After the success of the merch store here, probably pretty soon, I imagine.
Oh, wow, okay. So this might be a little bit too long, but so you guys talked about fixing item bloat. You know, like you go into a T60 map which has got fully rolled affixes, and then you turn off your loot filter, and literally the entire screen is covered in items. And obviously that uses a bunch of processing power. How do you fix item bloat without literally just turning it into like another trash personal loot system? Like, what happens if you're playing a Marauder Jug and you're using bows?
So we're not intending to make it so that the drops are specific to what you are using. But there are a lot of drops that no one needs to use at the moment. And honestly, this is a really big topic, right? A lot of white items that drop don't need to. And so some of the changes we're looking at here with the decluttering experiment we're doing is just fewer white items, slightly fewer blue items, and high-quality magic ones, high-quality rare ones. This is a much longer topic to be interviewed about, I suspect. Yeah, someone should ask me this when we've got more time available. Unfortunately, we have less than a minute now.
No, that's pretty much it, actually. I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to answer this question in 30 seconds.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you pretty much answered every question. I mean, it's actually insane. And on top of that, like, all the questions that I did want to ask, you guys already, answered them, which is, like, you clearly understand what the community, like, wants, and, you're doing your best to, like, get it done, which I just love.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the great questions, and representing New Zealand as well. All right, thanks so much.
Sweet as.